notification. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 96 of the Below the Yellow Line podcast. I'm your host, Joe Laney Pavlon. This time I shaved. I think it was a good opportunity to get rid of that beard, so I did. My camera will not allow me to embrace the shaved face because, Justin, when I joined the StreamYard link, it looked like an LSD trip was happening, so I'll probably take my camera off in a few moments, but then again, if it causes lag, like it probably does because technology is very unnegotiable.
Yep.
You know what? Then we'll just do that. Yep. Well, the Rolex 24 happened, and for the 59th time in January, the stars and cars of sports car racing took the trip down south to Daytona Beach, Florida, on a very beautiful Daytona International Speedway. The weather was near perfect for the race.
Yeah, people wanted rain, but that rain did not come.
I'm afraid that I'm like, hey.
Oh no!
Like whatever rain that might be on the forecast next week, like get that out of the way in the Rolex 24.
But this time, no rain during the Rolex 24. It's like, what? There's no rain? I was shocked when I saw the weather forecast of no rain. I'm like, wow.
I think it added to the competition as much as it may have taken the exceptions of endurance racing out of the picture, because usually some rain is part of the process of an endurance race, but nonetheless, it all came down to driving talent and durabilities of these teams, these mechanics, and everybody that was a factor of this race. That's why, for the first time ever, a record-setting 5 cars finished overall on the lead lap.
Yeah. That's impressive. That's really impressive.
Detail about each of the classes and the finishers of the race very soon. But once again, for the 5th time in team history, congratulations to Wayne Taylor Racing. They make history again at Daytona. Wayne Taylor Racing, first time winning this race in a non-General Motors car. This was the win with Acura. Wayne Taylor Racing's 3rd consecutive Rolex 24 win. They are now 4 for 5 in the DPi era for overall wins. What does that mean? Well, Wayne Taylor Racing and the Rolex 24, no matter what drivers they hire or what car they field, they are destined to win.
Yep.
Well, the drivers have a lot in play with this win, but also the engineer who made the call to pit early and spend most of the race just cruising around. They weren't front runners at all.
No, they were about like 4th to 5th most of the race. But I remember that their calls sometimes, like they did 2 tires at the end. But other than that, they also did putting older tires on. The reason older tires you get out of the pits faster on older tires, because colder tires, you got to warm them up. Compared to if you have those older tires on, that's an advantage for pit road. That's sometimes how the 10 gapped his competition when they did those strategies.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed the night hours were probably their best portion of the race. Their laps, I think, improved, and even with the different driver lineup, like we go back to 2020. I mean, the 2020 race from the 2021 race had its major difference, and of course, the biggest difference between 2020 and 2021 was the open racetrack.
Yeah,
that was why the length of the race was actually the record-setting last year in the Rolex 24 because of the 37 car grid.
Yeah, this time we had 49, so it was 12 cars more. But that's why there was more caution. There was more yellow flags compared to last year, but it was interesting. The racing was really quite intense.
Intense and competitive. We had some of the best drivers in the world compete on this stage. It's unbelievable. Filipe Albuquerque, Hélio Castroneves, Alexander Rossi, Ricky Taylor were the lineup for this year's race, Wayne Taylor Racing. Now, last year, they had almost a completely different line. In fact, all the drivers were different from last year to this year. Last year, they had Scott Dixon, Ryan Briscoe, Kamui Kobayashi, and Renger van der Zan. This year, they had Filipe Albuquerque, Hélio Castroneves, Alexander Rossi, and Ricky Taylor. Now, Ricky Taylor was part of the 2017 lineup that featured his brother Jordan, Taylor, Jeff Gordon, and Max Angelelli.
Yep.
2019's lineup featured a slightly different lineup. Ricky went his own way with another team that was actually Team Penske, Acura Team Penske.
Yeah.
So Jordan Taylor was in the lineup. Fernando Alonso, the two-time world champion, Fernando Alonso, Renger van der Zan, the Dutch driver, and Kamui Kobayashi. Now, Kobayashi's perfect streak comes to an end. It was close. He did pick up a podium, but it doesn't matter what the team or the drivers, or even in 2005 when Wayne himself was part of the lineup with Max Angelelli and Emmanuel Collar in the old Daytona prototype era.
Yep.
They are prepared. They were serious, and they ended up winning this race. Did the manufacturer change have anything to do with this win?
I don't think so. It's just like the drivers were like solid, but the drivers didn't make much mistakes. Like Filipe Albuquerque, he did during the night hours. Remember early on, he did so many good laps that he pulled away from Simon Pagenaud in the 48. Like all of the competitors kept saying that Filipe was so fast, they struggled to catch them. They struggled to catch him. It's like. Plus, you had Hélio's experience. Rossi has some experience in sports cars, and plus Ricky Taylor. Like, they just had a good strategy also. Their strategy helped, and when they were out front, they were out front. They had a fast car in the front of the field.
Yeah, and the thing with the Rolex 24 compared to other 24-hour races, and I know we discussed this 2 weeks ago in the Dubai 24 hours because the night length, the number of hours under darkness exceeds 13 hours.
Yeah.
Compared to the Le Mans 24-hour, which I don't know entirely. I know that race has like some of the lowest amount of hours under darkness.
Yeah.
Maybe because of what the time of year it is, but
yeah, like them it's usually in June, and also like
I mean, even last year's 24 hours of Le Mans wasn't even like the usual. Same,
yeah,
it was cooler, and
yeah,
hours were a little different. But even then, the Rolex 24, you have to get through the 9 hours.
Yeah.
You have to complete on the laps, and that's another thing too. It's very easy to lose a lap at the Rolex 24 compared to the Le Mans 24 hours.
Yeah, like I know Daytona's like, I know the Daytona road course is 3.56 miles. Le Mans is 8.4 miles, so you have a better chance of getting lapped at Daytona than at Le Mans. Like, remember that example? Remember Mazda? They were 2 laps down at one point. They got 1 lap back. Then they caught a lap. Like they got a lap.
Safety car. Given the go around to meet the back of the queue.
And then they got their next lap to be on the lead lap, and they ended up getting the podium in 3rd from being 2 laps down with 5 hours left. Like that's just
they played it out very well. The Mazda team is for another discussion, but they weren't really factors at all to be considered the podium. I thought they were an afterthought.
Yeah.
But in the end, they stuck around and made it to the end. That 2019 heartbreak when both cars blew up really showed the difference between mentality from then and now. They haven't really changed too many of the drivers in their program, and they're not as funded as other teams, even if they have that factory support.
Yeah, like the Mazda team actually only fields the 55. They shut down their 77 entry. And also, remember during the Rolex 24 last year, it was called still Mazda Team Yost. Starting at then the second Daytona race, that short race they did, they
bought them.
Yeah, so they renamed to Mazda Motorsports because Multimatic, which they don't run anymore in the Michelin Pilot Challenge, they used to run in that series. They bought the team, literally they bought it, so then they renamed it to just Mazda Motorsports. And then in that first weekend back, they end up winning the sprint race at Daytona. Yeah.
So maybe even like winning the sprint race says a lot to making it an endurance. And let's not forget, it's easy to forget, they're the defending Sebring 12-hour winners.
Yep, that's true.
And guess what? That was just about 3 months ago, almost less than 3 months.
Yeah, and also
February 1st.
Yeah, it's like I've also been realizing that. Yeah, next race, if you don't know, it's Sebring. If people didn't know.
Yes. We'll discuss that in a minute, but let's go down the line. We had the rundown. We had 5 classes in this event, so we'll start off with the overall winning class, and of course the DPi category. It was Wayne Taylor Racing. This was their first ever professional sports car race for the Wayne Taylor team, not in General Motors. They were in Acura, and we'll bring that up in just a few moments, but Acura becomes the first different manufacturer to win overall in this race in the DPi era, which began in 2017 after the specs changed from the Daytona prototype, the classic Daytona prototype that phased out after 2016 by IMSA.
Yeah.
This class is supposed to evolve in a category that can race for the overall Le Mans win in just 2 years from now.
Yeah.
It was only Cadillac that seemed to have the upper end with the Daytona wins because, really, let's go back to pointing at Wayne Taylor Racing for this because they're so good. Even when Mustang Sampling won the 2018 race, it was a Cadillac power engine. And we really didn't get to see the 5 years of variety in the 24-hour race, but it seemed like Acura had something to go against. And that, of course, was what Cadillac teams had to worry about entering this race.
Yeah.
They used to really learn from what Wayne Taylor Racing did in the past few years, but now they're on their own. Mazda, of course, have their own program. Not even Penske could win the Rolex 24. I know I'm taking those words from David Land on YouTube after watching his video last night, but Penske couldn't even win overall.
Yeah, that's true.
A brief time at IMSA in the last few years.
Yeah, but the thing with Wayne Taylor's team, the thing with Wayne Taylor Racing, they just had solid strategy. They were fifth for most of the race. For a good part of the race, they were just relaxing in 5th place, not being in contention until their pitch strategy leaped them to the lead. They kept doing that to gain the lead, and then the night hours when they put Albuquerque in the car, that's when they started getting faster. Night hours.
Albuquerque at night was the game changer, no doubt.
Yeah, he started clicking lap times that are so. Looking at those lap times, it's you're so shocked to see the fast laps, but it was really impressive.
So let's move down the list. And now I did want to mention before we discuss the second and third place finishers that Wayne Taylor Racing, they're 1 win away from tying Chip Ganassi Racing with 6 wins. That is the all-time winningest number for teams at the Rolex 24. Chip Ganassi Racing, of course, they came back to compete overall for the first time in 5 years. Nearly extended their own record. Now their record is in jeopardy going into 2022.
Yeah. Wayne Taylor Racing. Anytime you go to the Rolex 24, you consider them in
serious.
Yeah, and you consider them in contention because they're always there contending. Even if they're not there at the beginning, they're there towards the middle to the end of the race.
Absolutely. They have a different, unique style of endurance racing that really reminds fans of the older times of the Grand Am Rolex Sports Car Series, a much cheaper route to making the big stage of endurance racing with old Daytona prototypes, very very easy to purchase and field back in those days. That's the route that Wayne Taylor Racing came from. And I grew up watching them, at SunTrust Racing, just saying, "Oh, that's a team with the Florida Bank as a sponsor." But now times have definitely changed, and they are a powerhouse. I want to see that team go to Le Mans one day and compete for the overall one. Maybe it will happen with the LMDH.
We'll see.
And as for Acura, it's their first win as a constructor and an engine. The Honda brand has now 2 Rolex 24 wins. The 2016 race with Tequila Patron ESM.
Oh yeah, that
Honda powered car.
Oh yeah, I just remembered about that team.
5 years later, as rebranded to the Acura DPi, they have done it. So now that's out of the way. I forgot to mention one more thing, because Wayne Taylor Racing, makes you do all the hard work to remember the statistics and records they broke. They also tied Chip Ganassi Racing as becoming the only other team to win 3 consecutive Rolex 24s. That was from 06 to 08.
Yeah, 19, 20, and 21. We'll see if they could do 4 next year, but I'm not predicting that now. So people have to say Justin's going to change that.
Racing, they're there to stop them from breaking that other record, of course.
Yeah.
Right. So second place was the car that I predicted to win, and didn't win, especially being the only team not to have, or being the only team to have more than one manufacturer competing for the overall win, and that was the Action Express Racing Alley Cadillac number 48 entry with some of the greatest drivers in the world, Kamui Kobayashi, who put out a blister towards the end. Even that wasn't enough for Kamui to go perfect. So Kamui Kobayashi is not 3 for 3 in his personal record, but Jimmy Johnson.
Oh my!
Jimmy Johnson. He was impressive during the night hours. I was actually stunned. Everyone said Jimmy Johnson has to learn about IMSA cars. He's never driven an IMSA car. Haven't you looked at him in the other Rolex 24s back in Grand Am?
Yeah.
Hello.
He's
been on the podium twice. Now he's on the podium a third time.
Yeah, another second place. Like that. Yeah. He also had Simon Pagenaud. He was fast at one point.
Very fast. Pagenaud's early race stints were actually the better ones towards sunset.
Yeah. And then you also had Mike Rockenfeller. He was the 4th driver in that car.
One of the greatest race car drivers in the world. I mean, Rocky has done everything.
Yeah.
DTM. He's won the Rolex. He's won the Rolex 24.
Yeah.
In Le Mans, actually 11 years ago, he won Le Mans overall.
Yeah.
He won the Rolex 24 overall 11 years ago. That very same year, something Ken Miles almost accomplished in 1966 if it weren't for team orders.
I remember I just remembered about. I remember Mike Rockenfeller, Simon Pagenaud's interviews. They both of them at one point in their stints respectively, like Rockenfeller replaced Pagenaud. They both said they couldn't catch Albuquerque. He was so faster.
And the reigning world endurance LMP2 champion has proved once again why he should be in Formula One. And I'm really serious now. Filipe Albuquerque has some of the best lap times, driving stints. I mean, aren't some of the richest teams in the world in Formula One not looking at this race? I'm sure they are. Just take a look at how Kevin Magnussen did in his stint.
But Filipe Albuquerque, when he pulled his laps, I'm like, holy.
That's why United Autosport was really a serious contender because, like, in the ELMS and you saw they were almost undefeated in the ELMS and in the WEC last season in LMP2.
Yeah.
Action Express Racing, I think the reason why they didn't win was probably because they had the advantage. Like what I've seen from the race on Saturday during the early night hours, they were pretty good, but then it seemed like the Wayne Taylor team was just unstoppable by everyone. Everyone did what they could to stop Wayne Taylor from pulling away, but that was pretty much when they hit the boost button. I'm not saying that there's no boost. It's like a video game. But
also,
they were great.
But also about the 48 Acura, Cadillac, the 48 Cadillac. The old one did not have this, or the 31. This 48 had this, like, they had more downforce for some reason. So I've noticed, the coming out of the bus stop and the going onto the banking, you notice the 48 would be slower a little bit. He would gain on entries. But the exits, that's where he suffered in the exits because more downforce means lack of speed. They had so much downforce, which they gained in the corners. Off the corners, they lost their speed, which really didn't help too much to try to catch the 10. Because they were fast on almost every part, the 10 was fast. It really helped them over the 48 entry.
Yes, and it was an all-star showcase, and it's unfortunate the 31 car
my God,
had a problem because otherwise they would have. I wouldn't be surprised at all if this race had a 6-car lead lap finish and even further the record. But at this rate, I'll be expecting this kind of competition next year. It's a 24-hour race. Every race is different. Every year we see lack of action or lack of presence like we did last year, or lack of action 3 years ago. This time around, it was a full-on bullfight between powerhouses.
Yeah, 49 cars was so interesting. Like, compare 2018. Literally, the number 5 won by a lap over the 31. And the 5 had less power, too. There was an issue with the car. They had less power. They still won by a full lap. Even with less power, it's like, how do you manage to do that? Like,
I mean, that happened in the Spot 24 Hours last year.
Yeah, like, so impressive when that...
Yeah. So the podium for Jimmy Johnson, yes, another podium, first time in 13 years in the Rolex 24 that the 7-time NASCAR champ finished second, but I'll have to wait another year to win. That was something that Jeff Gordon, his teammate at Henry Motorsports at one time, was able to do. Well, third place, and they nearly finished second if it weren't for the safety car that happened in the last hour. I think was the final full course yellow.
Yeah.
Number 55, Mazda Motorsports, were really not
a
threat at all. They finished 6 seconds behind the overall winner with drivers John Bomarito, longtime Mazda representative, Oliver Jarvis, who is a Macau Grand Prix winner, and Harry Tincknell, who has a broad knowledge of endurance racing. The former European Le Mans Series champion and 2-time class winner of the Le Mans 24 Hours was in that car, but it just didn't seem like they had it. If the race were to be 26 hours, maybe they could have been a fight. But
also, or if they could have had better luck, because If you don't know, the 55 was not up there a lot.
No.
At one point, they were 2 laps down. They were lap 3. No, they were actually 3 laps down at one point.
They unlapped themselves during the night.
Yeah, the night they got to 2 laps. Then they got a safety car to get 1 lap. Then they actually raced again to get 1 lap. To get on the lead lap from 1 lap to on the lead lap. They raced around, got back on the lead lap, which was quite impressive. They were getting faster and faster. Like at one point, the 55 was catching the 10, but the thing with, if people say, oh, NASCAR has a lot of dirty air, for some reason, anytime you get on, like, example, you're on the, like, off of NASCAR turn 4, you try to make a move, you stall out behind someone. That's what it's the same thing when the 01 Cadillac tried to pass the 10. He kept stalling out, so that happened to the 55, but they had a good rebound from being 6th. They were 6th to 7th in the class most of the race. They were 6th or 7th. They ended up finishing 3rd. That's impressive. That's really impressive for the number
55, and especially thinking about the situation themselves. If last year they had 2 cars, this year they had 1 car, and maybe the lack of a second car can help a team, believe it or not. Most people think a team with multiple cars shutting down 1 car, or like reducing their size, is a bad thing. Sometimes it could be a good thing. That means everybody is focused on 1 entry, 1 car only.
Yeah.
Less energy, less time and money and parts on a sister car. Maybe that's what Mazda needed to be on the podium for this year's race. 4th and 5th place cars were also contenders to win, and that's why this was a record-breaking race for lead lap cars. 4th place was the return of another overall winning team, and that, of course, was Meyer Shank Racing, the team owned by Michael Shank, with help from Curb Agajanian, Curb Records. They fielded a Acura DPi, Acura ARX 05, with very professional and locally skilled drivers. Dane Cameron, who won the driving championship in 2019 and 2016. Overall, a class championship. AJ Allmendinger was with this very same team in 2012, winning overall. In fact, he drove the car when it meant the most in the final few hours. Juan Pablo Montoya, one of the greatest race car drivers in the world, and Olivier Pla. I'm actually surprised they weren't on the podium. I mean, and then again, the podium can only size 3 teams, 3 finishers, and it was just unbelievable that they were still in the hunt, even 54 seconds back. 5th place. Now, this was the 3rd car that really should have been on the podium, and even possibly could have won this race. Fifth place was Cadillac Chip Ganassi Racing.
Yep.
And why did they not win this race? I mean, it's ironic. The safety car that
last safety car
that was actually caused by debris from a flat tire, which looks like an engine failure.
Yep. And then with 8 minutes left, it happened again. The right rear blew on Scott Dixon's Cadillac.
Ranger Van is behind the wheel.
Oh yeah.
Cadillac Chip Ganassi Racing were entering this event their first overall campaign since 2016, and 6 years since their record-setting 6th overall win in 2015.
Yeah.
Scott Dixon, who was in that lineup in 2015, joined with Kevin Magnussen, son of Jan Magnussen, a very successful sports car driver himself, and Kevin Magnussen, recently out of Formula One, and Renger van der Zand, who is a very fast driver from the Netherlands. And van der Zand put out some of the fastest laps. In fact, I think he had the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah,
and the charge, I thought it was almost game over for Wayne Taylor Racing.
Yeah, but like they tried many things. Like, but the thing that Ranger was doing, like the thing about sports cars, like I mentioned, if you get behind someone, like the thing is, like Wayne Taylor Racing, they were ahead, but the thing is, like, you kind of get some slipstream through the thing to the tri-oval heading to turn 1, but they couldn't do anything because of the dirty air was happening. They lost time while they were stuck behind.
And the slower cars were just at the worst possible moments. And that's the thing with multi-class racing. Whether you like it or not, whether you're ready or not, those slow cars will most likely be in the way of your laps. That's why you can't really put out a fastest lap. Until, like, you can't really intend to put out a fast lap.
Yeah.
It just happens.
Yeah.
Each lap you'll get slowed down by a few cars, and trying to maneuver around at the same time while competing against other teams, it's a tall order. And Renger van der Zand did that, but it just seemed like the car was unhappy. Eventually the tire was pushed to the limit too hard, too soon, and it went flat.
Yeah. And also, do you know what's kind of bad about it? Literally at the start of the lap, the lap that he blew the tire, at the start of that lap, he said the tires feel good. That's the thing. He said the tires were good until...
Oh, are they really good?
Until
those tires they just blew.
Until NASCAR turn 3, that's when the right rear went down. And, I just remember seeing just the number... I just remember watching, I'm like, there's a gap. And then I see the 01 turning down pit road.
That was game over.
Yep.
Very impressive job. And for you Kevin Magnussen fans out there, this should be exciting news for you. This team, the driver, the pair between driver and car, as well as driver and team, expect some victories, even in the sprint races for Kevin Magnussen. In fact, Kevin Magnussen spent most of his time running sprint races in the back of the pack for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Being a back marker in Formula One really makes a driver push to the limit and work twice as hard to stay up to speed with everybody else when you're in a car that sets you back. And I think this time around, Kevin Magnussen finally has a car that he can work with, that works with him. I can't wait to see that team for Sebring.
Yeah.
So, DPi, we will mention just 2 more cars that were not in the finish of this race. Number 6th place car in class was number 31, entry from Action Express, the Wheel and Engineering Cadillac, with another stellar lineup: Mike Conway, Pipo Derani, Felipe Nasr, Chase Elliott. They had everything they needed to stay in the fight, but the car failed.
Yeah, it was something. The intake manifold fell on the track. They were hearing noise. Like anytime they shifted, they heard noise. They're wondering what it was. Like, and then the engineers, it's not a problem. Many hours later, it falls off with Nasser behind the wheel, which is like, it fell off, and they had to go to the garage and get that fixed.
They still managed to finish 8th overall, completing 783 laps, but certainly a disappointment for AX Racing, to say the least. And lastly, the only retirement of the DPi class was 34th overall, number 5, the all-French lineup, JDC Miller, Mustang Sampling Racing Cadillac number 5, the car that won in 2018, with Sebastien Bourdais, Louis Duval, Tristan Vautier. They were involved in an accident with the number 16 Wright Motorsports Porsche that actually caused a lot of controversy in the pits. And because of that, damage from the 5, it was unsustained even after hours in the garage.
Yeah, I left 5, yeah. But people were saying the 9 car hit the 16. Like, people were saying, I don't know who, but people thought the 9 Porsche hit the 16. But I didn't see the 9 anywhere at the time. I saw them behind, but like way behind the 16 at the time. I thought maybe the 16 braked late by accident because it happens. But yeah, it was weird just seeing the 5 and the 16. Really sucks for that 5 car. They were strong at the beginning. Like, I remember Duval was so fast at the beginning. Vautier and they were all running good until that accident. They had to go to the garage and get the car fixed.
Right, and they called it a night pretty soon. It was just too much to handle. Very unfortunate.
Yep.
That's the conversation for the DPi class. Now let's move to the LMP2 class, which we saw a very nice field of 10 cars overall, a much bigger number than last year or in any year since the separation of the overall winning class from DPIs to LMP2s as they went separate with their own specs. LMP2 class has struggled to find presence in the WeatherTech Championship as a whole, not just the 24-hour race. This year, we had 10 entries and a few from the World Endurance Championship, cars that compete in Le Mans, some domestic-based teams in the United States that, are loyal to IMSA. This time around, we've seen the presence, and congratulations to Era Motorsport.
Yep.
Number 18, Era Motorsport, Oreca 07, completed 787 laps, finishing 6th overall. Only 2 cars finished on the class lead lap. They had a great bout with Tower Motorsports by Starworks in car number 8. But in the end, it was number 18 with drivers Paul-Loup, Chatin, Ryan Dalziel, 52-year-old Dwight Merriman, and Kyle Tilley.
Yep.
Kyle Tilley, who's been with the team for a while. Era Motorsport should be proud. And they're actually one of many teams that will be going to the UAE in a few weeks for the Asian Le Mans Series.
Yeah, and actually that entry, if you never noticed, the paint scheme is actually designed, like the color paint scheme and stuff, was designed by a 10-year-old kid from Ottawa, which was really cool to see that on that car. Like, I remember seeing it during the race. It was, they were fast. I know people were all saying the 52 was going to win. I was one of those people, but that 18 car, he was up front so much of the race. He was there lurking, and when it was his time to shine, that's when they were fast.
Yes, but also Power Motorsports by Starworks, a team based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, provided by Tower Motorsports. That win was robbed by a penalty after a restart when the safety car pulled at the end of the lap. The team made a pass against another car before they were supposed to, and were given a drive-through penalty by the stewards, putting them to second. Only 2 cars finished in the class lead lap, but you have to give credit to the 8 entry as well. Gabriel Aubry, Timothy Biore, John Ferrano, Matthew Vaxivier. They worked together. They stayed in the hunt, but in the end, penalties. You hate to see a penalty, be the decider of a race, and it was. Era Motorsport did a great job for sure.
Yeah.
Oreca's first and second and third for the LMP2 podium. It was number 82, Dragon Speed, the Dragon Speed USA LLC entry number 82. They ran Oreca's as well.
Yeah.
Great debut by Christopher Mies in the prototypes. This was the first ever major sports car race in a prototype for longtime Audi GT factory driver Christopher Mies, Fabian Schiller, Eric Lutz, Devin DiFrancesco.
Yeah.
Third place in class. Fourth place, a few more laps back, was car number 51, the Rick Ware Racing Eurasia lineup with drivers Austin Dillon, Sven Mueller, Cody Ware, and Salih Yoluke.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the highest finishing Ligier in the race had struggles within the race week, and that was, of course, when Matthew Jaminet, who was part of the winning team for the Dubai 24 2 weeks ago, a factory Porsche driver, was slated to make his major prototype debut with the team. He tested positive for COVID-19 just a few days after the
qualifying race.
Yes, the qualifying race, and fellow Porsche driver Sven Mueller
opted in.
He opted to drive, and they put him in.
Yeah.
Fifth place in the LMP2 car was the number 11 Win Autosport Oreca 07. We'll hold off on the GT class discussions, the GT classes, in a little bit. We'll save that for later, because the LMP3 class, I'd like to discuss that for a little bit. They had a lot of criticism from the fellow drivers in other classes, especially the professional GT driving teams. They had really the most criticism, and which resulted in the separate starts, and whether you like them or not, it did end up in a problem for a different reason.
Yeah.
Well, the LMP3 cars, while they are faster alone from the GTLMs, the drivers are amateur levels, usually amateur levels, gentlemen drivers. Some of the newest and experienced drivers. These LMP3s are common in the European Le Mans series, and you'll see them in the Asian Le Mans series as well. But this new class, I think, did pretty good for a debut in the Rolex 24. They weren't even that really problematic in the race. I couldn't tell. I mean, obviously they stood out as the problematic class in the 100-minute qualifying race.
Yeah, but they had to learn the car in rain. That's the thing. But they actually didn't cause much problems. It's kind of bad that the coverage, the only time that most the LMP3s got TV time was when the 6 went through the grass. That was the most time that they got. But I sometimes saw a few running there and here and there. Or when the 38 got in it in a crash. That's the only other time you saw on the LMP3 running. But it was an interesting. LMP3 was the biggest gap.
Yes, the only class not to finish with cars on the same lap. But, I don't think anyone should be surprised. But what I am surprised is that they finished ahead of the GT3s, but they couldn't even do that in the qualifying race, a much shorter event.
Yeah,
I guess driver skill, but that was really when the controversy, erupted when GT3 cars, which of course the GT Daytona class requires you to have at least I believe one pro-am or amateur driver in the lineup for this race, beat the class winning LMP3. That wasn't the case, because the average speed of these cars, especially with the dry conditions, 100% in the race, 24-hour race, we saw a 12-lap advantage from the LMP3 winner to the GTD winner. So I'm glad that happened. But Riley Motorsports should pat themselves on the back. They did a great job with this win. Drivers Spencer Pigot, Oliver Askew from the IndyCar Series, Scott Andrews from Australia, and Gar Robinson, American driver, put the Ligier JSP 320, car number 74, to victory lane in class, finishing 18th overall. Now 3 laps behind, and second Sean Creech Motorsport, which I noticed they were one of the better teams in the qualifying race.
Yeah.
Seen from Wayne Boyd, especially. I know he was one of the better drivers. Jan Killeri, Lawrence Wilsey, and Joao Barbosa.
Yeah, like that
driver.
Yeah, like that 33 entry is actually, they have the IMSA Prototype Challenge. They're part of that. They have a program in that series, so. But at least they had drivers that knew the Daytona track. Like, there's some drivers I've noticed that have never been to. I remember some of the LMP3 drivers, some of them never seen Daytona. So they had to learn the track during the practices and all that, but they had experience in that 33 of being at the track at Daytona.
Finishing third on the LMP3 conversation was number 6, the car that won the qualifying race, the Mueller Motorsport America Duquesne M30DO8, number 6, driven by Lawrence Hoare, Kenton Cook, Moritz Kranz, and Stephen McAleer, completing 750 laps, finishing 20th overall. 4th place in class was the car number 91, the sister car to the winning class car, number 91, Riley Motorsports Ligier. And 5th place was the 54 Core Autosport Ligier, the car I picked.
Me too. Yep, our picks didn't go well in that class because I just thought, experience. That's what I picked. But I never expected Riley Motorsport 74 to get the win in LMP3.
Your ability won the race over there, and also staying on the racetrack was a key issue for those guys.
Yeah.
Prototypes out of the way. Let's move to the GT classes, and I know they have another boiling discussion that we need to cap. We'll start with the GTLM class, the class that consists of LMGTE cars for professional GT drivers. Corvette, flawless. 1st and 2nd, 11th and 12th overall. 770 laps complete. Number 3 gets the honor of winning in class for the final time in GTE history at the 24 Hours of Daytona.
Yeah, which I actually picked them. I picked the 3 winning, which was good. At least I got somebody else, my other pick, right.
Yes, and they didn't have, it wasn't a smooth race for them at all. Number 3, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. Nicky Catsburg, who is also a BMW driver, will same drive BMW at the Asian Law Series. Jordan Taylor and Antonio Garcia. We'll get into Garcia in just a few, but Antonio Garcia, who is a 3-time class winner at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, all with Corvette, as well as an overall winner and 2-time class winner himself, suffered COVID mid-race. So it's mid-race, probably in the middle of the night. I don't know. They never really I don't think anybody told the media about Antonio Garcia testing positive for COVID until after the race, which I think was a good decision on the PR part. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't say a word about someone having COVID until the race is over. But what I assumed happened was someone tapped Antonio from behind and said, "Hey, come here," and was informed, "You are tested positive for COVID-19 and have to leave the building." something that we've seen in sports for the last 10 months.
Yes, it is.
Let's look Justin Turner in the Los Angeles Dodgers when they won the World Series. Remember, he was pulled from the game in the 6th or 7th inning and was informed privately about getting a positive COVID test.
Yeah, it does happen. It's still reality. If people didn't know, it's I know it's February. It's February. I know the COVID started in like December 2019, like in where it initially happened, but
back when it didn't exist.
Yeah, and now
now it's everywhere.
Yep, now that's why people wear masks and stuff, but you just got to respect what's going on.
Yes, and I think Corvette Racing did a great job of handling the COVID situation for Antonio Garcia. And the team, I'm sure, raced their hearts out at the end with just 2 drivers.
Yeah.
Jordan Taylor and Nicky Catsburg had to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And we wish Antonio all the best. It's a shame he wasn't part of the victory photo. But Corvette did a brilliant job in what is the last year of GTLMs at Daytona. Number 4 finished second, and they were on a slightly different strategy, but enough to stay in the lead lap. In fact, we saw the 3 and 4 compete against each other a little bit, respectfully, because they're teammates. Corvette Racing number 4, Tommy Milner, Alexander Sims, Nick Tandy. Nick Tandy is a Porsche driver outside of IMSA. Alexander Sims, a Formula E driver. Tommy Milner, who has been with General Motors for many years, were in the hunt. Of course, they didn't have to worry about losing a driver to something that is so. It's really the magnitude of getting tested positive for COVID mid-race and having to tell the team. And the team, I'm sure, probably spent a long time deciding whether we release this to the public or not. And they released after the race. In fact, COVID-19, let's move into the COVID situation here. There were 4 COVID cases within the past 2 weeks of the Rolex 24.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody handled the situation well. This goes out to teams, drivers, mechanics, the team owners, everybody involved in handling the COVID situation, because we knew with the entry list that it would be a possibility that a very high likelihood of someone getting tested positive for COVID in the 2-week span, that it was only 4 cases, and each of them were handled well. The most obvious case for Garcia was Black Swan Racing, a team that consists of drivers that ran the Porsche 991 Cup class at the Dubai 24. Traveling home from Dubai, the team owner and driver, Tim Pappas, tested positive for COVID. He had to pull the team out right away. He made a good decision on that. Unfortunately for Larry Tinvord and the other guys in the 540 car, they weren't able to run the Rolex. Larry Tinvord, the Porsche GT Cup champion.
Yeah.
And then Matthew Jaminet, who was also from Dubai, unlike the Black Swan situation, he had some time in the car. He was the first driver in the facility to test positive for COVID-19 and have to be removed. And everybody did a great job in handling that, as well as Matthew Jaminet himself. And of course, we wish him the very best.
Yeah.
Seeing him with Sven Mueller. Then, of course, on race day, Michael De Quesada.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He was in one of the Mercedes AMG customer racing teams, tested positive for COVID-19 just hours before the start, and the team replaced him with veteran Mike Skeen. I think that Mercedes team did a brilliant job of handling the situation. Instead of saying breaking news, Michael Dickinson tested positive for COVID-19. They said, breaking news, we have a driver change.
Yeah.
Here's Mike Skeen. He'll drive the car. And then they quietly announced the reason behind the driver change, which I think was a good job on the PR's part.
Yeah, it was Allegra, Motorsports number 28 that Skeen got into, but Mike Skeen has experience. He also ran in the day before he ran the Michelin Pilot Challenge on Friday, but for BMW, for Bimmer World, which he has experience at Daytona, which he was a good choice to put.
Yeah. And then there were a lot of other drivers who ran both the Friday and Saturday races. Yep. I think the facility did a brilliant job allowing fans at the limitations. Daytona International Speedway deserves a huge pat on the back, a huge acknowledgement from everybody. The fans also, we have to acknowledge them too. They were cooperative. Wouldn't see any issues with them. I mean, Rossi fans are probably the best fans of Motorsport.
Yeah, it's not like the person at that one time during the Chili Bowl. It's not those types, but it's like they acted good. Nothing happened, and it was really everybody took it seriously.
Yes, fans had their own campgrounds. Everyone dealt with different structures, rules, guidelines. I was thinking of going to the race. Armani, I know you went. Armani went from, you'll see him on NASCAR by the numbers, of course. But this is a good way of foreshadowing how fans will be treated to the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
In just a week from now. Back to the GT discussion. Corvettes did everything they done before, and they continued that kind of philosophy, and it showed. Their 1-2 finish is something to be proud of if you're in the Corvette camp. Third place, now we've seen competition from some of the other cars. Third place, number 24, BMW Team RLL. Last race at Daytona for the M8 GTE. John Edwards, Augusto Farfus, Jesse Chrome, Marco Whitman were on the lineup. A great roster of factory drivers. Unfortunately, it just seemed like the Corvettes were in the upper hand.
Yeah, they were fast during the whole race. Yeah, both Corvettes, but the 3 Corvette, they didn't just fight with Antonio Garcia asked to leave. They also had the car. Remember the car on pit road wouldn't fire up? They got fired up after many seconds. They lost so much time doing that. And they still ended up winning after fighting that on pit road when the car wouldn't refire from the pit stop. But at least they got that car refired.
Yes. And the car that had a different strategy, pulling a Hail Mary, resulting in a podium, not at all. Not a podium at all. That was Risi Competition. The only Ferrari, number 62, Ferrari 488 GTE was driven by the factory lineup of Ferrari drivers with James Collado, Jules Gugnon, Alessandro Pierguidi, and David Rigon. They were actually out in front in the last few hours, but then again, different pit strategy. They tried to pull a Hail Mary. It didn't work. And Ferrari fell short again. And then fourth in class, number 25, BMW Team RLL with another great lineup of BMW drivers. Philip Eng, Timo Glock, Connor D. Philippe, Bruno Spengler. But it just didn't seem like they had that Nürburgring 24-hour focus.
Yeah.
And in fact, they were part of the first lap tangle. We'll say that for a moment. The number 79 car that finished sixth and last in class, the WeatherTech Racing privateer entry provided by Proton competition with drivers Kevin Estre, Richard Leach, Cooper McNeil, and Jamie Bruni suffering a problem on the opening lap. Another controversial move by IMSA resulted in another controversial start of the race. So, with the LMP3s, IMSA announced separate starts for the initial start of the 24 Hours of Daytona. Something that has not, I can't remember the last time they did a separate start, but it must have been years ago. I know Grand Am teams are familiar with the separate start back when the merger happened in 2014, because Grand Am Rolex Sports Car Series, prior to the merger, always had separate starts for prototypes and GT cars. So it didn't matter where you started or where you qualified in the overall results. You still had to start with your car class. So what IMSA did was put the prototypes, DPIs, LMP2s, LMP3s, based off their qualifying times. If you're a prototype, no matter where you qualified overall, you start with the prototypes. And I think about a good 10, 15 seconds back, wherever you qualified in GT cars, so whether the professional drivers in GTLMs qualified in, let's say 12th overall or 10th overall, it didn't matter. You were put to your own class in the back in a separate start. So essentially, I mean, if you watch the Nürburgring 24 hours, you'll start to understand, because they actually have 3 big packs of separate starts, but the separate start ended up being the costly mistake for the GTLM competitors. I mean, it nearly ended the race for most of the GT cars. I mean, all the 79 had to do was spin a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And thankfully, that wasn't the case. But now we're going to go to Sebring with more questions unanswered.
Yeah, but the thing about the start, people are saying the 25, whoever was behind the wheel did that on purpose. I don't think he did on purpose, but people are saying, the 70, people said that was the case, but what about the Corvette? The whatever Corvette was leading the pack, people said, other people thought they checked up in front of. Yeah, they kind of people said they didn't slow down. People think I don't think the BMW tried to take out WeatherTech 79 on the start.
But it was a very frustrating thing to see an accident at the start of a 24-hour race approaching the start line.
Yeah, people thought the Busch Clash last year had that. We had a wreck fest, but not in the first. At the start, we didn't have a.
More frustrating than a team or a driver to experience than crashing before or on the first lap. I mean, this is not a Formula One race. Now, I get it. Formula One is a sprint race.
Yeah.
Racing, regardless, you have to get to the front as fast as you can. That will literally set the tone for the race.
But
the start doesn't mean any of that.
Yeah, you can't win the race on the first lap, but you could lose it there.
And Porsche, unfortunately, never recovered. They made up a few laps in the process, but still just could not advance a single position in classes. As it was just a very unfortunate debut for the new privateer team, as of course the Porsche factory program opted out of North American racing, which is a key role into why the IMSA committee decided to phase out the GTLM cars. We'll discuss that in a few, because we have to discuss the GTD class. The GT3 cars were the most competitive class. We would have had 20, but because of the Black Swan Racing COVID crisis, there were only 19 cars in that class. A very competitive class of drivers and teams from all backgrounds and teams from all kinds of backgrounds running GT3s in what is the final 24 Hours of Daytona with a sole GT3 class. it turned out that driver experience was the key decider. Mercedes factory drivers Mauro Engel, Philip Ellis, and Indy Donchi with Russell Ward brought the number 57 HTP Motorsport with Windward Racing Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo 2 class victory. And by the way, this is Windward Racing if you're a follower of the Michelin Pilot Challenge, the second highest level of IMSA competition. This is Windward Racing's debut on the main stage. Congratulations to them, and congratulations to HTP Motorsport, a team known best for, unfortunately, losing the Nürburgring 24 hours on the final lap to another Mercedes. That, of course, wasn't the case. We had Mercedes 1-2, so customer racing teams have a lot to celebrate after yesterday's event. They completed 745 laps and finished 22nd overall. There were 5 cars in the class lead lap. Shows you how competitive this category of racing really is when you look at the speed of the drivers, especially Mauro Engel, and the teamwork that's involved here.
Yeah.
This number 57 car, if that lineup remains the same at Sebring.
I was about to say, no, that's NASCAR. I never knew IMSA races at Phoenix.
They used to race at Phoenix, like
yeah, the road course.
Yeah, road course.
Not the oval. Okay, yeah, Sebring.
And I don't think they can run the road course anymore because they reconfigured the entire place.
Yeah, and they're not going to race on the oval. That would be really. People were like, "Why is there sports cars racing on an oval?" But Sebring, yeah, which that's in March, so yeah. they have enough time to plan ahead.
That lineup should stay the same because it paid off at Daytona.
Yeah, Windward Racing was actually. That was their first time in this series. They usually run the other series, the Michelin Pilot series. They've had some success, but not always. But they had speed in their car. I know controversy from hitting the 21 car, the AF Corsa, but that happens sometimes. Sometimes you have got the person on the outside tries to close the door. Which that's not always a thing you want to do. It's like when the 48 Kobayashi dove under the 01, they spun. But this time instead of the 57 going around, the 57 clipped the back of the 21. That spun him around.
Ferrari never recovered either.
Oof, no, they finished many laps behind.
Mm-hmm. So that's your GTD winning cars. Remember, this is the last year of the Rolex 24 with one GT3 class. Second place in that category was the number 75 Sun Energy 1 Racing Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo with owner-driver Kenny Habul, Michael Grenier, Rafael Marcello, and Lucas Stolz. So factory drivers with the owner-driver resulted in a brilliant podium effort. The 1-2 for Mercedes AMG Customer Racing. Third place was the number 1 Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. Drivers Andrea Caldarelli, Corey Lewis, Brian Sellers, and Madison Snow were the finishers of that podium-winning car.
Yep.
Not the Lamborghini I expected to finish highest amongst the Italian brand, but they put on a great effort in the closing stages to put themselves in that position. And if it weren't for a few incidents on the racetrack, I'm sure this entry finishing 4th in class would have had a better finish. And that was the Wright Motorsports Porsche with Klaus Bauer, Jan Halen, Trent Hinman, and Patrick Long finishing 4th in class. Now, that team had another problem entering the race itself. Trent Hinman was tapped to replace Ryan Hardwick after Hardwick sustained a concussion at a practice crash. So, switches were made, and Trent Hinman did a pretty good job racing in some foreign equipment, but it worked in the end. Unfortunately, the 16 car did run into trouble and received a penalty by the race officials after making contact with the 5 Cadillac, which took that car out of the race.
Yeah.
And they nearly finished on podium, too. Just a few minor mistakes in the night hours may have resulted in a better finish if that car didn't have problems. But in the end, just a few mistakes can put you out of contention to win. They still finish on the lead lap, so that is good on itself. In 5th place is the Aston Martin number 23 Heart of Racing team with Roman DeAngelis, Ross Gunn, Ian James, and Darren Turner with the 23 Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT3. A brilliant job. In 5th place in Class E, I already mentioned it was the 23. I was going to say the 96 car, which I thought would have a better finish. Unfortunately, they just never had much luck.
Well, yeah, but for me, my pick for that class, the 9, they were up there, but then they had a mechanical failure. Then they went to garage. Then they finished more laps down. And the 9 was running about 3rd to 5th most of the race until they had to go to the garage, and they finished many laps behind in the number 9.
I think they would have had better luck as well. Can't always be perfect. Can't win everything.
Yeah.
Even though they're spectacular in the sprint races, which we've seen with Bill Oberlin, winning against IMSA driver, 61 wins, surpassing Scott Pruitt at the age of 52.
Yeah.
Robbie Foley, Aiden Reed, Colton Herta, they won the qualifying race. But unfortunately, highest finishing BMW wasn't as lucky this time around.
Well, remember what happened with the hose, the fuel hose?
Oh, yes. Thanks for reminding me. That was scary.
Yep.
See, Bill Oberlin was in the car.
But who climbed out? I remember there was a driver.
Oberlin climbed out.
And he, I guess, got sprayed by some fuel.
Sprayed by a broken fuel hose.
And the gas man also got sprayed, so he had to go take a shower.
That was scary.
Yeah, I just saw they were trying to put the fuel in. I don't know who got in. Somebody got in. Who replaced Oberlin?
Can't remember entirely, but
just ripped the hose, and that was scary. Just watching I came back from work. I watched the highlights. I'm like, what? That happened?
You know, the advancements of technology and racing, auto racing, we haven't seen moments like that in a long time where a fire just could break out or gas could just explode or leak. It's rare nowadays, but if you look back at any Formula One Grand Prix in the past, any car race, fire used to be the norm.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
But I know NASCAR, they have fuel cans, like actual cans, but there could still be fire.
And intense regulations against the dress code these pit crew members have to abide by. They have to wear fire-resistant clothing.
Yeah.
And usually on a good day, you may not need it or think you need it until you do.
Yeah.
So we'll carry on to the rest of the IMSA championship. For you IMSA fans out there, there is a championship to be decided, and this was the first race.
Yeah.
11 more races to go as of this podcast, which means anything could change. As of February 1, there's 11 more races to go, and it starts at round 2 for the 2021 edition of the 12 Hours of Sebring.
Yep.
Another testing ground. It's usually step 1 Daytona, step 2 Sebring, step 3 Le Mans. This is step 2, and hopefully the world can let that happen. It didn't last year.
We'll have to see. It just depends how everything goes, because right now it's good, but there's people talking about a third wave that could be worse, I heard, than the second wave that people are talking about, which I guess that third wave's in Canada. So, yeah, so that third wave, we'll just have to see, and hopefully everything goes to plan.
Yes, and then again, we are in Florida, so being in Florida makes the likeliness of a Sebring 12 hours in March this year even better. That will be the second of 4 races in the Michelin Endurance Cup.
Yeah.
So the full season, round 2 of 12, the Michelin Endurance Cup Championship will be round 2 of 4. The other races, the 6 hours of the Glen, the Watkins Glen 6 hours, which didn't happen last year, it's scheduled on June 27th. I believe it's a week, or maybe it was 2 weeks after Le Mans.
Yeah, and it's actually a week. Usually it would be July 4th, but it's a week earlier. The week that NASCAR has their Pocono doubleheader, that's the races that week. And yeah, that's race 3 of 4, and then the final one is the Motel Petit Le Mans Road Atlanta is the round 4 of 4 of the Endurance Cup.
Yes, and we actually saw a partial attendance at the Petit Le Mans last year, and the 6 hours of Road Atlanta, which made up for the canceled Watkins Glen race. But the 10-hour race, which is also scheduled to be the 12th and final race of the complete season on October 9th as of this podcast.
Yeah.
Also, as of this podcast, the first sprint race is not until May 16th at Mid-Ohio.
Yep.
I know Ohio's been a better accessible state within the past few months. Let's hope that doesn't change.
Yeah, because literally the thing with Mid-Ohio, the next month, like 3 weeks after IMSA race, NASCAR has the Xfinity Series running there in May. So they want to make sure that they could get these races in, because I know people say, oh, Mid-Ohio, it's kind of boring. I like Road America, but I actually like Mid-Ohio, how it races. Like, I've raced on Mid-Ohio on in NASCAR games, but also on Forza, game. Like, I've raced at the track. I know how it feels like. It's an interesting race. Yeah.
Yes, and then, of course, this is where it gets a little more complicated here. June 6th, Bill Isle, as part of the Detroit Grand Prix, the street course. Unfortunately, I wish I could feel confident in saying that race has happened, but that race is scheduled on June 6th to be the second sprint race of the season.
That's actually a week before the IndyCar race. The IndyCar race is on the 12th and the 13th.
I thought they readjusted that.
No, it still says June 12th, June 13th.
That's good to know. I mean, of course, IMSA would never make a race happen on the same weekend as Le Mans, but IndyCar usually let their drivers go.
I guess
there's something we don't know from the city that has to be part of 2 weekends of racing at street courses, whether that's quarantine or just maximum capacity, whatever it is.
Yeah, because it's kind of interesting on a street course. And in IMSA, that's not the only street course, if you're wondering. They had the other one, Long Beach, on September 25th, which was scheduled original when they were scheduled for the
early April. Usually.
The third race of the IndyCar season. They were scheduled right when
they're a supporting race to the Grand Prix.
Yeah, there's still the supporting race, but that's now in September.
What a shame.
Yeah.
That would actually be the final race of the Sprint Cup Championship, the cup that goes to GTD classes for sprint races only. That would also be the 11th of 12 races for the full season. Now, we discussed IMSA. We know that sports car racing is not just a one sanction
No.
series. It's
No.
they have to, or you have to understand that there are other sanctions that need to negotiate to allow teams to run in other parts of the world or other parts of the country as sports car teams and drivers go everywhere. It's not just this one series.
You also have like World Endurance Championship. That's the biggest that they go not just to one country. They're in
The World Endurance Championship already called off the 1,000 miles of Sebring, a race that supports the 12-hour race.
It was supposed to be actually the first race of the season. That's now moved to April at what track was it?
Portimao. The 8 hours of Portimao will be very interesting. We've seen a lot of made-up events happen at the Portimao circuit.
Yeah.
And that's one of them on April 4th. But, we've seen the European Le Mans Series make some adjustments. I think their response to COVID is not starting the season until mid-April. Let the crisis play out. Maybe something will happen. They given Barcelona the nod to open the season. Every European Le Mans Series race will be 4 hours in length. As of February 1st, Barcelona on April 18th, 16th of May, we'll have the 4 hours of Spielberg at the Red Bull Ring. I'm going to very much be excited for that. 4 hours of Monza on July 11th, round 3, round 4, the 4 hours of La Castella. We've seen a lot of action at La Castella with the made-up races last year across many different leagues. On the 29th of August, the 4 hours of Spa on September 19th.
Okay.
And the 4 hours of Portimao to close the season on the 24th of October. We haven't heard too many comments from the European Le Mans Series and the ACO that runs the ELMS about any changes yet. And when organizations are quiet about such things, that means take the message and let some time pass.
Yeah, because we're still only February 1st. We're not even near April yet. We're not April or May yet. No, we can't predict the future. Just saying. We don't have time machines, so no, don't. We gotta wait.
Yes, but what we do know, also before we mention the Le Mans Series, the World Endurance Championship, they're going to have to make some more changes here. I think Spa might be workable on the 1st of May. We've seen many events at Spa with or without fans. Yeah. Portimao, for sure. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they let that happen on 4th of April. Most teams are actually based in Europe anyways.
Yeah.
24 hours of Le Mans scheduled for the 12th, 13th of June. 6 hours of Monza on the 18th of July. 6 hours of Fuji. Hopefully that happens. 16th of September, or the 26th of September. And the 8 hours of Bahrain will close the season on the 20th of November. And hopefully with no changes to the schedule, probably not going to stay the same. I mean, for logistic reasons, we may see some changes here, but we do know that WEC has until April for an off-season.
Yep.
The Intercontinental GT World Challenge will not. The SRO. Let's not forget the SRO comprises of many GT World Challenges, whether those are sprint races or endurance races from each region. The Intercontinental GT World Challenge, the SRO events, the SRO group comprises of many series, which of course the main level is the IGTC, which their main event is the canceled 12 hours of Bathurst. Usually talk about it, Bathurst 12 hours around late January, early February, but not this year. The 8 hours of Indy was a great addition, part of the GT World Challenge America.
Yeah.
The European Challenge is an interesting one. They have a endurance cup and a sprint cup, and many teams only show up for just the endurance events or just the sprint events. But there's also an overall championship for every single race. So there are incentives within incentives for European-based GT3 teams. The British GT Championship has their own schedule about to begin. GT World Challenge Australia will debut in 2021, beginning at Phillip Island on the 20th of February. Now, we've seen Australia the Australia itself make changes with the COVID situation that might affect the schedule, but this own series could help teams that are based in Australia, especially now with the restrictions, have that opportunity to achieve their own glory in 2021. But then again, we'll get 4 races for the IGTC. That begins on the Spa 24 hours in the 29th of July, and it ends at the Kyalami 9 hours this fall. So I think 4 races spread out is a good way to approach COVID-19 and having a series. Now let's discuss the most anticipated sports cars season and set of sports car events this month, and that is the upcoming Asian Le Mans series. They had to make more changes than expected. See you in 2021 doesn't happen anymore. Of course, we are in 2021, and unfortunately, the Asian Le Mans season was affected by COVID-19 last year. A few teams pulled out towards the end in February, the 2019-2020 season. We saw teams not run the 4 hours of Buriram in Thailand because of COVID-19 restrictions. That was about February, the last weekend of February, I think, 2 weeks before. I have to remember. But this year, they are racing in the UAE alone. So this ruthless decision, or that's what it seemed, turned out to be the best decision by the ACO to make a month-long season held at one country and 2 facilities with back-to-back doubleheader races, 4-hour races, 4 of them, 2 tracks, 2 days, weeks apart. Beginning next weekend at the 4 hours of Dubai at the Dubai Autodrome, home of the Dubai 24 Hours that just took place 2 weeks ago, on the 13th and 14th of February. And then we have the 19th and 20th of February, the 4 hours of Abu Dhabi at the Yas Marina circuit, home of course, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix Formula One event. That was actually held a month and a half ago.
Yeah, in December. And some people say, oh, Abu Dhabi, no, that's boring. Well, and for F1 it is, but...
And I didn't really get to see the 6 hours of Abu Dhabi, the Creventic sanctioned race,
but
because it wasn't televised. I think fans are up for a good treat, a really exciting time to be a sports car fan. I'm happy that the UAE has been to motorsports in these times. I think it's a good sign for these facilities to say, yes, we can host your event. And record-breaking entries for a 2-week trek and 2 back-to-back doubleheaders. We have a record-breaking GT3 grid. LMP3s and LMP2s. LMP2s will contest for the overall victory. What are the expectations for all these teams going into the UAE for the Asian Le Mans season?
I think it's going to be interesting because, like, some of these drivers have never been to these 2 tracks. Some people don't know about them much, but some have experience at those 2 racetracks. But it's going to be really interesting to see how the racing is at the Dubai Autodrome and at the Yas Marina circuit, because they usually wouldn't go there, but because of this 2021, that's why. But I feel like it's going to be interesting, the racing, how it's going to play out at those 2 facilities.
4-hour races are usually considered to be endurance races. They are. 4-hour races are endurance races, but I feel like we're going to see these become very competitive events. And just by looking at the driver lineups for each of these teams, we see about teams that have 2 drivers, 3 drivers, 1 team with 4 drivers. But how a 4-driver team will play out at a 4-hour race, that's going to be very interesting for endurance races. What can they do? And also the fact that double headers are usually non-existent in endurance racing.
Yeah.
But we're going to get them 2 times at each track, Saturday and a Sunday race.
Yep.
Beginning next weekend. The LMP2 winning team that was in the Rolex 24 Era Motorsport will be part of that.
Yep.
G-Drive Racing, which of course one of the best teams on the world stage. Euro International. One team I don't see, and this is of course the most question branch that isn't in this, is of course United Autosports. Where is United Autosports in LMP2? No, they're in LMP3. They have 3 entries.
Okay. At least they have a car in a class. At least they are there.
We have a lot of LMP3s from many different teams. Most of them are single car entries. The drivers are like 25% confirmed. For a lot of the teams are, quiet about the drivers in the lineup, of course, for logistics reasons. We can understand.
But there's also a thing that's interesting for the Asian Le Mans series, like they have their they don't have they have a driver lineup, but without drivers on their website. But there's a thing that's interesting, I know there's the GT class. There's 3 cars that are GTLM cars. I'm looking through it right now. They have the full LMP2, LMP3, GT, the 7 Inception Racing with Optimum, the Rinaldi number 66 entry, and the Absolute Racing 91 it's a GTLM car class.
Yes, there'll be a separate incentive for amateur GT3 teams this time around. And maybe that will be a good preview for what to expect at IMSA next year with the lack of a GT3 team. And that's where the next discussion is.
Okay. That's interesting what the Absolute Racing team did. The 91's AM car, well, their other entry, the 92, is a regular entry. So they basically have an amateur car like the number 91, and then they have their number 92 for... Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting how Absolute Racing decided to do their entries.
Yes, Walking Horse Motorsport might be a team to beat. BMW already announced their lineups. We have John Miller and Chandler Hull, two drivers who won the Dubai 24-hour GT4 class with ST Racing just a few weeks back, with recent 24 Hours of Daytona winner, Nicky Catsburg. So look out for those guys. How about AF Corsa? I think AF Corsa and Rinaldi Racing Ferraris will be prepared for this one, especially the 51 and 52 entries. We did learn Hub Auto Corsa has switched. Not Hub Auto Corsa. It's no longer Hub Auto Corsa because they left Ferrari, but Hub Auto switched to Mercedes AMG. What does that mean for Ferrari? Well, one less team. Mercedes, they get another one. And GT3 Racing.
Yeah.
This is another discussion. I wanted to save that for later because we were just talking about the Rolex 24 and everything, but we did learn from IMSA that the LMGTE cars will no longer be included in the championship next year and in the Rolex 24 Daytona. The amount of exits from GTE programs, major GTE programs, Aston Martin Racing, the championship winning GTE Pro class from the World Endurance Championship, pulled out.
Yeah.
The factory team, in the name of Aston Martin focusing on Formula One, they pulled out of their own factory team from the GTE Pro class in the World Endurance Championship.
Yeah.
They still provide cars for customer teams, as they have for years, and they will continue to do so. That's a big deal. Porsche announcing their departure from the IMSA North American side of factory GT racing. That's a big deal. Them not being in the Rolex 24 is a rarity. Obviously, Porsche had to withdraw from North America for COVID financial reasons. That's understandable, but still, it's another team gone down. 2019, we saw the departure from GTE racing by Ford. GTE Chip Ganassi Racing provided the Ford GTs entries from 2016 to 2019. They had great presence in the World Endurance Championship, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, Daytona, and the IMSA WeatherTech Championship. And we actually saw some great battles. I honestly missed those Ford GTs. It used to be like Chevy versus Ford. It was cool to watch two American brands fight out on the racetrack.
Yeah.
They're gone. And luckily honestly, I'm glad Ford left before 2020, knowing what happened.
Yeah.
The pandemic didn't throw them out. They left for unrelated reasons. And Corvette did not run the World Endurance Championship. They had a different plan when the C8R, the newest GTE car to date, came out. The Corvette C8R was revealed to debut at the Rolex 24 2020 and eventually race at Le Mans in 2020. They had a schedule already planned. That's why you didn't see Corvette race the World Endurance Championship as much in the 2019 portion of the season.
Yeah.
Guess what? They never had that time. They pulled out. They couldn't even race at Le Mans.
Yeah.
Big deal. BMW pulled out of World Endurance Championship level racing, and they're not even racing at IMSA full time. Just the Michelin Endurance Cup.
Yeah.
What does this mean for the long-term future of GT racing?
I don't know. It's like some people are saying, like, there's always reasons why. People think it's all on the pandemic, but sometimes it's just cost, even without the pandemic, like some teams, like
It's very
yeah, it's not like NASCAR trucks that. It's not like the Xfinity Series with Mike Harmon Racing. It's not those. It's not cheap. Like NASCAR's cheaper than is one of the cheapest like motorsports. IMSA, like sports car racing, is
it
the
all depends on the
highest.
cars you field.
Yeah,
Ride.
yeah, it is not cheap. It costs a lot of money.
I mean, there was one reason only. I assume that IMSA brought the LMP3 cars into the main championship stage and the 24 Hours of Daytona to bring back depth, presence, added competition to increase the field size. We all knew the field size wasn't going to increase by itself, whether we had a 4 or 5 car class going into this year.
Yeah,
The cost of fielding a race team is so large and
yeah,
high, and it's tough to sustain.
yeah,
As much as I'm excited for the future of sports car racing in 2021, the Rolex 24 Daytona might just be one of the few races that will have a major grid. We almost hit 50. We were supposed to hit 50. It was 50. Let's just call it 50. It was estimated. 50 cars showed up. IMSA made sure that their field size would increase. How? By allowing teams to show up, really force them to show up, having a qualifying race, making it mandatory that the Roar before the 24 weekend isn't just a test session and a welcome back, Happy New Year, how was your holidays? This was a serious decision by IMSA for the 24-hour race at Daytona that these teams make sure they show up. And guess what? I think it paid off. I don't want to see a qualifying race in the future again, but how IMSA handled the potential dropout risk,
yeah,
I think it, on a business side, they get an A+. The Asia Le Mans series, as much as it sucks not to watch those cars race at tracks that they should be racing at, the ACO gets an A+. And anyways, let's not forget the Asia Le Mans Series Championship is usually just a handful of races, 4 races. It was 4 races last year. So they made the right decision to race at tracks that are accessible to race at, and to have these back-to-back events. It's a good experiment for the future of endurance racing.
yeah,
But we all understand why
yeah,
the ACO made this maneuver.
yeah,
Teams show up for 1 month in February to
yeah,
race for a championship. 2 double headers at the same country, 2 different tracks, 2 weekends. I think they made the right decision.
yeah. I feel like they did too, because not just with the cost, it's also travel. Traveling is so hard with the pandemic. If people haven't realized that it is really hard to travel between countries. Like there's some countries less restrictions, like for some reason, but then others are really high with the restrictions because it happens. Yeah, it's like sometimes like the thing they're not like the countries are trying to limit the spread. They don't want it to get to like too many cases that they can't control it, so that's why they're limiting things.
Right. Formula E, they're supposed to start.
This originally they were supposed to race in January, but that was thrown out the window, literally. They're starting at the end of the month on the 26th of February. That's their season starts.
I had to write Ypres. Hopefully, the area just still don't get why they're racing there. Will be able to host championship starters. We do know that Formula E did confirm other dates, which include Rome, Valencia, Monaco as part of the Monaco Grand Prix weekend, Marrakesh, and 2 races at Santiago.
Yeah.
But those are just scheduled dates.
They're scheduled.
I doubt we'll get a street course event with this current living situation if it fails to change in 2 months' time. I just want to be realistic.
Yeah, because you don't even know how. Because people say, "Oh, people are taking it so well right now."
2021's gonna be all fine. We'll see you next year. 2020 sucks.
2020.
Yeah, it's 2021, all right, and we're 1 month through.
Yeah, like literally, you're like, "Oh, 2021. Oh, geez, more COVID cases are happening again."
And as morbid as it sounds, they're not going to stop.
No, they're not.
It's because we're in a new year. And I give Daytona and IMSA and the teams that face the COVID situations themselves an A+ for how COVID was handled. If this continues in the UAE for the next 2 weeks in the Asia Le Mans series, then I will definitely have more optimism for larger grids, more presence in these sports car races towards the future, because these teams, they face enough obstacles just getting to the track.
Yeah.
On a good day. The Rolex 24 was a big test. Everyone's taking notes from what happened this past weekend. And yeah, it was just another Rolex 24, but in terms of the year 2021 itself, it was monumental. I hope that this helps other organizations like the SRO, GT series, the ACO's championships, of course, the World Endurance Championship, the European Le Mans Series and Asian Le Mans Series can learn from this. Creventic, I think Creventic did a brilliant job hosting the Dubai 24 Hours.
Yeah.
Also, we'll bring more coverage to their season in next month when we lay the groundwork for what to expect at the Mugello 12 Hours. That's in March.
Yeah.
So Daytona is coming, and the 500, we mean. The Daytona 500 will start the new and unique season for NASCAR's Cup Series. There's a lot to be excited for as a NASCAR fan.
Yeah. It is going to be an interesting season, which today we are Monday. Next week, starting Monday, you'll have NASCAR Race Hub if people watch that. It starts then. Then on the 9th, which is a week and a day from now, will be the Busch Clash at the Daytona Road Course. Then they start going through the practice 1, then the qualifying, then they got the duels plus truck practice, then they got extreme practice, truck qualifying, truck race, and it's basically the speed week schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, and also on the 11th, I have a paper due, which I need to start.
Oh.
Yeah, I forgot.
And also, people, if you didn't hear the breaking news tonight, Mark Beard Sr., the president of Beard Motorsports, has passed away.
That's terrible.
Yep, and the 62 will still run the 500 as planned. They're going to be honoring him during the race.
yeah, I want to see Noah Gragson qualify in the 500. It might be a tall order, but with the great size, my condolences to the Beard family. They're a private NASCAR team, not a factory-backed program. Although they use their resources to the fullest with help from other factory-backed NASCAR teams like Richard Childress Racing and Hendrick Motorsports to put cars out on the racetrack. Brendan Gaughan last year finished his best ever Daytona 500, finished 7th, also the best for their team. And of course, 2019, who could forget Brendan Gaughan at Talladega racing for the lead and ending up flying in the air just a lap later.
Yeah.
But yeah, my condolences. Our condolences go out to the Beard family, Beard Motorsports. That's just terrible news.
Yeah.
And Noah Gragson will have a lot on his plate, a lot to work for.
Yeah.
Debut attempting the Daytona 500 for a team that's mourning. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
Also, next week's podcast, we will be starting that on the afternoon.
Because of what was it again? There's
the ARCA race, ARCA East race at.
Yeah, that is next week at 7:40 Eastern time on Track Pass. If people have Track Pass,
Speedweeks will look a little differently. What do you think? I know we're not going to spend too much time on NASCAR and the Daytona 500 tonight, but are you looking forward to a condensed week, or are you worried?
I'm a little bit worried because a thing that I'm worried about is the weather. Like the Daytona road course for the Clash wouldn't be bad, but you can't run it on the oval in the rain. Like the thing, it's like usually we expect rain during like the Rolex 24. But then when I saw no rain, I'm like, oh gosh, hopefully
we didn't trade rain for February.
Yeah.
On a sunny day for the Rolex 24.
Yeah, because it's so condensed. Like you have the Busch Clash on Tuesday. Wednesday you got practice and qualifying for the 500. Thursday you got a truck practice. You got truck practice plus the duels on Thursday. Then you got Friday. You got Xfinity practice, truck qualifying, and the truck race all on Friday. Then you got the Saturday, which is more insane. You have 2 Cup practices plus Xfinity qualifying, the ARCA race, and the Xfinity race all on Saturday, and then you got the big race on the Sunday.
Did you know that in the state of Florida, it takes a good little shower on a Saturday, sun shower.
Yeah.
And a nice rainstorm. I know we're not in summertime yet. This kind of weather is usually prevalent, but hey, the Daytona 500 was nice and shiny. Beautiful day. We had the president. We had the first lady. We had the honorary pace lap with the president in his presidential limousine. We had 1 to go before green. It was partly cloudy, but fine. Dale Earnhardt Jr. with the green flag in hand. 2020 is going to be a great season.
Then the rain
What could go wrong? And then the rain came.
Yeah.
And we had to wait an hour for the initial green flag. It just killed the spirit. And then we had rain after 20 laps and on and off rain. It wasn't just rain and that's it.
Okay. And then after that, it's like, then it was known. They just said, put it to Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern.
Can only fight against weather for so long and eventually you have to surrender to the weather. Yeah. And of course, Monday's weather was flawless. But the point is, I wish I could be excited for all these events, and I can understand why NASCAR wants that to happen with the current situation. Everyone's in, everyone's out. If someone gets tested, and NASCAR did announce earlier today that they will provide rapid COVID-19 tests to solve this, so that they're present now. You can get the COVID situation a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
that we can remove personnel faster from the racetrack and self-quarantine them, I don't think a 2-week period would make any sense. And let's not forget, the Super Bowl is this weekend. The Super Bowl, of all things. You do not clash with the Super Bowl. I don't care who you are. If you want ratings, don't hold the clash on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, because like the clash would be on FS1. Like, I know people are gonna say the clash is on FS1, not CBS. I know it's not, but the thing is, who's gonna get more viewers? The Super Bowl is gonna get more. That's the thing.
Even the day-long coverage of Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Shadows and everything else.
All those pre-games, like they have, like the pre-games, like they have a 30-minute one, then a 1-hour one. They have their longer pre-game. Like they have so many pre-games, and then you gotta wait till 6 p.m. for the game to start. But at least I'm not I've seen people that they're the type to watch the pre-game. All the pre-games, it's
I
like
don't think see lightning or any of that.
No.
On the night of the Busch Clash.
Yeah, that's one reason I think.
Summer, usually. Yeah. And I say usually because I don't want to come back here in 11 or in 8 days and be wrong.
Yeah, but for me, the Daytona road course for the Clash is not bad because they could put rain tires. They've done it before. Like, they did partially at the Roval. Yeah, at the Charlotte Roval, but the thing is, you can't put rain tires on an oval. You can't try to put rain tires on ovals. You see cars on the banking. No, with rain tires, they would slide off the banking. You'll see cars if they would go race in the rain with rain tires. You would see cars sliding onto the banking instead, off the banking, and that wouldn't work.
Yes, sir. Also, if you're a fan of two-wheel racing, Monster Energy Supercross had part 1 of the Indianapolis trip. There were 3 races in total. Part 1 won by Ken Roczen, who had the dominating bike and lost on the final lap last week.
Wow.
To Webb, the final Houston round. He rebounds from heartbreak to win. So the Honda rider finishes P1, while the KTM rider who won last week finished P3 on the podium. Cooper Webb was separated by Eli Tomac in the fight for second. Adam Cianciarulo, Kawasaki rider, and Zach Osborne from Husqvarna's team finished 4th and 5th. Point standings, it's now 6 points with the advantage for Ken Roczen over Cooper Webb. Eli Tomac sits 3rd, 9 points behind. 16 points behind, and 4th is Adam Cianciarulo, and in 5th place is Justin Barcia, who won the inaugural race of the season, Houston Part 1. Part 2 and 3 is later this week for Indianapolis, rounds 5 and 6 of the 17-round tour. So, I mean, I've been following a lot of Supercross lately, and especially now because you know where that's going next year on TV in the U.S., just like everything else, because NBC decided to chop the sports network. Entertaining stuff. I think this is a good wrap for the podcast.
Yep.
Anything else you want to bring up before we?
No. I found something that was not related to racing, but I guess somebody's ordered something from FedEx, but the Capitals ordered $5,000 worth of hockey sticks from FedEx, and FedEx delivered it to someone's house by accident. Because it says it said the building, like, it said company name Washington Capitals. They ended up sending it to some fan's house, which is a little bit weird.
Probably Washington Capitol Drive or something. I don't know. Speaking of FedEx, they are part of Denny Hamlin, a long time. Denny Hamlin, FedEx, and Joe Gibbs Racing since the very start have worked together, and they will continue for a multi-year contract extension. Congratulations to the 3-time Daytona 500 champion. Hey, he might just win a 4th one. I wouldn't be surprised at this point. He's just too good at these tracks.
I remember there was a person saying with this announcement, "Oh, but that's good for Bubba. He'll have more cars." But I'm like, no, he doesn't need that many cars. I know.
What team does Denny Hamlin drive for?
Joe Gibbs Racing.
And what team does Bubba Wallace drive for?
2311 Racing. It's
Take a hint.
Yeah, and also, and Eric Jones, he has a new sponsor for the Clash, and people are saying, "Oh, he's going to win the championship." I'm like, Petty Equipment versus Gibbs Equipment. Gibbs Equipment's better than Petty's Equipment by quite a bit.
Now we get to see a test for Eric Jones and how he can perform in lesser top-end equipment. That hasn't happened yet in Eric Jones' Cup Series career.
Yeah, he's always
championship-winning teams in two of his 4 full-time seasons.
Yeah, he's been with Joe Gibbs Racing, and he's been with the Furniture Row Racing, which they had Gibbs Equipment. They had alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing.
And that was a championship-winning season for Furniture Row, while Eric Jones in his his second year at Joe Gibbs Racing was a championship-winning season. So half of his career, he was a teammate to a Cup Series champion.
Yeah.
Now, Eric Jones is in a different position, racing by himself for the King, where you are tied with the history of a team and a car owner more than the current progress of the team. I think Eric Jones might be a good fit.
Yeah, but it's not going to be a championship-winning season. No, it's not going to be winning championships. That 40
effort.
Yeah, it's like their equipment is not the best. Like 2013 was decent, but then it's like 2014 they kind of dwindled. 2016. Like, I know they hired Hornish, which Hornish didn't do the bad, but he didn't do the best either. Then they had Brian Scott, which I don't know. That decision was not the best decision either. Except Brian Scott outran Tony Stewart in his final race at Homestead. And that was also Brian Scott's last Cup race.
Yeah, and then they went to Sync Car and switched manufacturers. They've been a Chevrolet since now it's their 3rd year or 4th year.
Yeah, they switched in 2018 after 2017. Then I remember when
Chevy had a slow start.
Yeah, I remember when I remember in 2017. That's when they announced Bubba to the 43, and I predicted then. At the time, I predicted Almirola to the 10 car, which I remember I predicted that. Now Almirola is still in the 10 car, obviously. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Eric Jones will perform in that number 43 entry for Richard Petty Motorsports.
Okay, so I think this is a good end for the podcast. We've exceeded 2 hours. This is the time of year where these podcasts are getting longer by the minute.
Yep.
So, unfortunately, we could not bring Danny on tonight. Something came up, and I guess he wasn't able to make the show, but we'll bring it back next week. Next week, we will have an afternoon podcast. Not sure what time. We'll keep you posted on our social media.
Yep.
Follow us on Twitter, World Racing Media Group, and subscribe to us on YouTube, as well as follow World Racing Media on Instagram.
Yep.
YouTube, we have everything covered. Twitter is where we break our news out. For my partner, Justin Heber, I'm Joe Laney Pavlon, and signing off. Have a good night.